Hello, and good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Job. Um, Job is about to sit down and give us a little lecture on wisdom. And we're just going to sit here patiently, like the good friends that we are. And we're going to listen to whatever he says. Right. So before I started today, to keep you all updated, right, in the loop, this is a black canvas. So I was at a party with my friend Gene. He threw the party actually. And this was like very recently after getting out of high school, maybe a year or two afterwards. And we got really drunk and we got really high and we sat there and we watched Bob Ross paint for hours. We must have watched the entire first season. We were there until like 3 a.m. But I'm not doing it in order, and I'm just gonna paint, right, and then see if I can do a collection of his, right. At least learn how to paint. I mean, I've done like one acrylic paint before, and I'm like figuring it out. So we'll see how it goes. Who knows? I may even take a video of it. You may get to see some of it. But it's episode 1-3, the Ebony Sunset. And it's a black canvas, which I think is probably preferable, right? When you know what you're painting, it's set up, right? You don't want to always paint on a white canvas sometimes because that's not really, what it is. And maybe I need to, when I'm painting, right, I need to realize that when you're doing a landscape that you can like put dirt in, before you put the grass, kind of, like a light dirt, something. But it all adds to the texture and the color and the way that you're looking at it and like the depth and the shading and everything that's going on to make you see what you're seeing. So it takes a lot of time and effort, and I'm trying to realize that. And if only Job had realized that, and he would be maybe in a more positive situation, right? And we could have had a real coming of age story. We never got to see Job's coming of age story for his first triumphs, right? We only got to see the back end crest of the wave on his way down. But he'll be back up, I promise. So, chapter 28. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth and copper is smelted from ore. Yep. They sure did, Job. And I don't know how they figured that out either. You're right. That is an interesting concept. So, like, how did human beings figure out that, like, if you just superheated rocks for long enough, they would melt? And eventually you would be left over. Somebody taught them, right? I think they were taught before Noah's flood. Yeah. That's when they knew. Man puts an end to darkness and searches every recess for ore in the darkness and shadow of death. Which maybe Job is kind of highlighting the problem on Earth, which is like the scarcity of resources and the ability to attain those resources. And when there's enough people on Earth, right, that becomes an issue real fast. He breaks open a shaft away from people in places forgotten by feet. They hang far away from men, they swing to and fro. As for death, from it comes bread. Oh, I read that incorrectly. As for earth, from it comes bread, but underneath it is turned up as by fire. Its stones are the source of sapphires, and it contains gold dust. That path no bird knows. He's talking about migration patterns in birds now? Nor has the falcon eyes seen it. The proud lions have not trodden it, nor have the fierce lion passed over it. He puts his hand on the flint. He overturns the mountains at the roots. He cuts out channels in the rocks, and his eyes see every precious thing. He dams up the streams from trickling. What is hidden, he brings forth to light. So, I'm actually going to we're going to sit down for a minute. I'm going to tell you all of the story, right? This is a story of like the quest for the Holy Grail. You heard? You know? Men, seems to be, right? And women that are like interlinked in a group, right? So like the Knights of the Round Table, who were in charge of the nation. Who's to say, right, if it was a real thing? But like the Ark of the Covenant was a real thing that people, fought over, right? I was talking about it last episode. But like the quest for the Holy Grail, stuff like that, the Excalibur sword, stuff like that, right? Those are holy items, relics that human beings are just like fascinated with, myself included, right? I would love nothing more than to just see a stone in the middle of the woods with a huge sword just sticking out of it, right? And wouldn't it be me to go up, right, and just pull it right out, right? And then you have a holy sword. That's what it is. I read a book. It was a series of books. It was called the Alfred Kropp series. And he was basically like a kid that got pulled into like a secret organization that did stuff like that. They had the Excalibur sword and, other swords and stuff. But that story, right, that spirit of that story lives on, right, in adults. And back when we didn't have the society that we had today, and you could just go band together with a bunch of people and just go fucking pillage a village, right, and kill everybody, right? That's the times that they were living in. You could just go do that and get away with it. You wouldn't necessarily get away with it, right? The not getting away with it is what caused the strife. Like, Job was attacked by people that he's talking about right now that like just took his stuff, right, pillaged all of his stuff, and then you had the acts of God, right, with the fire and the hail and whatnot destroying everything else. But that's what he sees, right? That's kind of it's like a crow seeing shiny things, right? They enjoy it. Like, it's known that if you are to train a crow, like, they like shiny things, right? They're attracted to them unnaturally, unconsciously. And that's also in human beings. So maybe Job is trying to connect the fact that, like, the animals that we have dominion over are to be used as such, but then as an example for ourselves, as into, like, it's weird, dude. Life is weird. It's like waves of being conscious and unconscious. You can only do it. It's like, how long can you hold your breath kind of thing, Some of y'all can't hold your breath at all. You're not breathing. But Job's pretending to breathe, but his friends are really giving him CPR while he's choking, That's what's really going on. So we'll get back to it. But he's right? I mean, humans have created so much. I mean, dams, right? Hydroelectric dams. Think about that. Not only did they stop the flow of water, but they somehow can turn wheels with water to create energy. Like, are you kidding me? They're using magnets to do that, by the way. The water is hitting up whatever surface, right? And that's causing a force. And that causes a wheel to turn, and that wheel is turning an axle, and that axle is connected to another wheel, but that wheel is made of magnets, And those magnets are surrounded by coils of copper, and that spins and it's wound in such a way to where fucking electrons just move. Like, that's insane, dude. That's insane. They were talking about just melting rocks, and that's what we're able to do now. So, you know, again, try and explain that to them. Their heads would explode. They knew about fire, and that was about it. Flint was instant fire, and that's good that they had it, right? But we live in a different world. But where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? It's not here, bro. It's not with you. Man does not know its value. Neither do you. Nor is it found in the land of the living. Of course it is, Joe. What the fuck does that even mean? You wishing you were dead again? You're right, though. The questions that you're looking for, my boy, you cannot find here. Maybe you are right. I apologize. But you're still wrong in the end. So I guess not. But you're right. The questions that you're asking for, Job, you're only going to find out after death. The deep says, "It is not me," and the sea says, "It is not with me." It cannot be purchased for gold, nor can silver be weighed for its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, in precious onyx or sapphire. Neither gold nor crystal can equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewelry of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or quartz, for the price of wisdom is above rubies. The topaz of Ethiopia cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. The geography that I'm getting right now is amazing. That means they had a pretty good understanding of the world at that time, right? They knew about Ethiopia. It's not too far away, but like in terms of how far away Canaan is to Egypt, it's probably like double or triple that length of distance. So it's a long time. And to know that they had like the Hope Diamond, right, and stuff like that that's found in Africa, which are like these enormous diamonds that are like worth millions of dollars. But they had knowledge, you know, of stuff like that. And precious stones are always to be, I think, treated differently or weird. I'm going to say weird, right? Because, like, for you to draw a connection between rubies and sapphires and emeralds, like, right? That's the pure essence of, like, colored rock, I guess, being filtered out. And that's what you're left with, is the purest form of that mineral, which is cool, right? That's a cool thing. But then, like, people were putting it on crowns, right? And then using it for, like, trading purposes. And then eventually it's used in, like, alchemy, right? And other esoteric things, right? Which, none of which are for God. You know? At least, and like, that's in Exodus, right? When I was talking about that, like, God, I think at least, knew how much humans valued that, right? And so he had to use that as their resource to use it. Not to say that they wouldn't be greedy and keep it, but he needed them to be able to use their most precious resource, first of all, to take the desire away from them at the end of the day, right? And to, like, I guess, set the balance of things correctly in the initial, like, creation state, because I think things are a little volatile in the beginning when you create things, as Moses found out, right? To think about that, right? Moses didn't get in because he got frustrated at the people, you know, because they were acting up. and not acting up like the apostles were. It is hidden from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the air. Destruction and death say, "We have heard a report about it with our ears. God understands its ways. God understands its way, and he knows its place. For he looks at the ends of the earth and sees under the whole heavens to establish a weight for the wind, and apportion the waters by measure. When he made a law for the rain and a path for the thunderbolt." That was a good one. Oh. When he made a law for the rain and a path for the thunderbolt, then he saw wisdom and declared it. He prepared it indeed. He searched it out, and to man he said, "Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding." Sometime, and then as a man on a quest, I have a tattoo, right? This tattoo, that one right there. I know you've all seen it. It is the alchemical symbol for sulfur. As I revert back to my normal state of retardation. The alchemical symbol for sulfur. Now, I got very interested in like the Keys of Solomon, and a little bit of magic, right? I grew up watching Harry Potter. You know, and not to say, but like your media that you consume does affect the way that you think a little bit, and I think it's probably a pretty good idea to start acknowledging that, because if we don't, you're all gonna go insane, because you're not gonna know where your ideas are coming from, right? Because you're an unconscious animal that's just running on autopilot. You need to wake up, dude. So I was doing a podcast with my soon-to-be divorced wife, and one of the things, right, is being like pushed into a role, and like I had gone on a path, right, and it was not a good path, and I knew it wasn't a good path. But what gave me kind of fuel in that was like knowing that Jesus didn't come back to spend time with like the good people, you know? That's not why he showed up. He wasn't here to like have a good time, really, you know? He was here to have some really difficult conversations and do some really difficult things, right? That 100% of us couldn't do today, right? Because we're not doing it. We're not living that life, right? We're reading his words and constantly falling short, right? So, not to say, right, you can come from anywhere and still reach the right decision. I got this tattoo so I didn't forget, and as like a beacon for other people, you know? Because people do see it, and they'll ask about it, right? And then you can like steer people in the right direction. And just because I chose to like learn about it, right, at the end of the day, because most people won't even take that step. They'll just know it exists because they heard in a conversation, right, that it is wrong. And it's good to know that it is wrong and it's not right at the end of the day, right? And I think maybe, right, the fear of the Lord, that's what usually stops people from doing things when you have faith, right, and you understand the situation that you're in. And that, like, there should be a little bit of reverence and respect, I think, at least, but at the same time maybe God understands that we're human beings and that's not always like possible. I said I haven't read too much of it, but like when David is talking to God, he's talking to him as a friend. I maybe need to start doing that. I don't know, right? That's not how I talk to him. I don't ask him for a lot. Ask him for help when I need it, and like when I don't know what to do, which I guess is how David did, but like he would also need it more, right? Because he's a king and doing things, and when you're a king, right, everything that you do forces everybody else to do things. So that's the kind of situation he was in as well. Um, but I brought that up, right? Because he talks about a path for a thunderbolt, and the apportion of waters by measure, which is the rain, and he's weighing the wind. So in the book of Enoch, it goes very in depth on like the portals and windows in heaven, on which ones of them that the snow, hail, sleet, like all the different types of weather you could possibly imagine, they all have a place where they come from and go to, and they have like a, it's all designed, you know? That's pretty much what it talks about. And, right, maybe that is forgotten as well, you know? Maybe you do lose reverence for the fact that every single thing that you are looking at right now is only by the grace of God. There was another show, Solar Opposites, great show. Um, but they turned invisible, right? They had an invisibility ray. And they brought up the premise, right? Nobody's become invisible as a thing, but if you were to become invisible, your eyeballs would also be invisible. Therefore, the light that was hitting them to create the picture that we know as vision today wouldn't be able to occur. And that, yes, you would be able to become invisible, but you wouldn't be able to see. You would also be blind. So you'd be invisible and blind. Which is true balance. That is the universe in itself, right? And that is a superhuman, right? Making a decision and God being like, nice try, but you're gonna have to try again next time. You know? It's a beautiful thing. God created everything, even the shitty things. Even if you think there's fucking Satanists running around doing shit, he still created them. There's a way, right? There's, you know? It's either really serious or it's not at all. Like, why have we been fighting these wars for hundreds of thousands of years? You know? For what purpose? For some fucking beliefs, right? At the end of the day. But it's not about that, right? It's about resources. And it's about the lives that we live every day. And if you could make that the focus of it and stop trying to, like, muddy the waters on that and paint people a beautiful picture over here while they're not worrying about the real things that are happening in their lives, like, that's what you should be doing, right? That's the real injustices that you see today, is people distracting you, right? That's literally what it is. They're distracting every single moment of your life so you cannot think. You need to start, just get off your phone. Go outside. Do something. You know? Talk to people. Be nice. Right? Have conversations. It's okay to disagree with people. It's okay to have an opinion. It's okay to talk. It's okay to speak up and do all that. Right? As long as you have respect, and at the end of the day that you understand that God is there, right? As you understand, right? And then God gives you protection for anything that may happen along the way, right? So, but yeah, to go back to the tattoo, right? Sorry, this is going to be a little bit longer of a video, but I got a lot of tattoos as remembrance, right? Understanding that human beings operate under an unconscious kind of like behavior when it comes to survival, right? I started getting tattoos before I started doing drugs. Right as I was starting to do drugs, and I could see the effect that it was having on me, and I literally could not stop. It was the weirdest thing I've ever gone through in my entire life. But it was like necessary to keep doing it, right? And it was really sad. But like you can see parts of yourself being stripped away day by day, and it's really sad. So like to just keep those parts of yourself knowing that God would have my back at the end of the day, right? And I would get through all of this and it would be a learning experience and it would come out the end of the day, it'd be fine. Maybe I didn't want that all the time, right? And I really did fall into the pits of despair as Job did, you know? It's not a, I'm not saying I made the right decisions or did the right thing. I did not. At the end of the day, I didn't. I learned a lot, and I'm so glad of what I learned, right? Because other people don't have to learn it now. They don't have to go through the shit that I did, right? I just need to be able to articulate that in a deliverable fashion for people to understand, right? Something that's simple enough, right? Something similar to what Jesus did, right, in the parables, and being able to transfer information in such a way that they really understand it is a beautiful thing. So, all in the quest of understanding. Because I think maybe understanding could maybe bridge the gap between lack of belief, Maybe that's what it is. And maybe the lack of belief and understanding that the lack of belief exists in both parties is maybe a bridge in communication nonetheless, At least you can understand that you don't understand. As ass backwards as that may be. Come on. And to man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. So, maybe I did think I could go into, these organizations and help people, right? Knowing that I didn't believe in what they believed in. And maybe I could help a couple people and just live my life, right? I mean, demons, witchcraft, magic, as we know it, is not what you think. It's human words. People use human words to make people do things. And if you think that's not witchcraft, you're an idiot. You're taught it as kids, right? You learn it from other people in school, the people that you hang around with, right? We were literally all taught this thousands of years ago, and through generations it was forgotten, right? But it's remembered in stories and fairy tales, right? And stuff like that. Those are real things that people do. And you can see it, and people do it unconsciously, which is the saddest part, right? Or maybe they do it unconsciously, but once you actually learn about it and what it is, you realize that being unconscious is a better part of it, right? And it's better to do those bad things unconsciously. At the end of the day, right? Like, the more forethought that you have behind things, the more malicious it is at the end of the day, right? And that's the other part of it, maybe. I don't know. Like, when you're living your life for God, right? It's, hard to know. God gives you the wisdom so you can think, but when God gives you the words to speak, right, is when one of the apostles, Jesus? Maybe one of them, no. Well, when God asks Moses to go talk to the Israelites, right, and he says, I'm not a good speaker. And then he forces God to go get Aaron, pretty much. And I say force, but it says in the Bible that God got mad because of that. He got frustrated. The anger or the fire of God burned, right? To say that, Moses didn't have faith. Not in that moment, right? He didn't believe in that God. The God that was talking to him. Doesn't matter if it's the only God or not, right? He didn't believe in it. He didn't have faith, right? Because if he had faith, he would have just said yes. And then Aaron might have just showed up anyways, and he might have not had to do it, right? But you just say yes. You move on with your life. God will help you out, and it's a constructive process, and God will help you build it. So stop complaining, right? And just keep living your life. Simple as that. Now, Job is going to try and defend himself more. I couldn't even imagine what he could begin to say. Job further continued his discourse and said, "Oh, that I were as in past months, as in the days when God watched over me." He's still watching over you, and he's either crying or laughing. I don't know. I don't know which one. Very disappointed, I assume. When his lamp shone upon my head, and when his light I walked through darkness, and by his light I walked through darkness. Just as I was in the days of my prime, when the friendly counsel of God was over my tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were around me, when my steps were bathed with cream, and the rock poured out of rivers of oil for me. Job, you're bringing this up to make God feel bad. You should be using this as fire within yourself to go get all this stuff back. Right? Right. That is what you should be doing. It's good to remember, right? It's good to remember. Let me keep reading, so maybe I can entangle you more in your words, Job. When I went out of the gate by the city, when I took my seat in the open square, the young men saw me and hid. And the aged arose and stood. The princes refrained from talking and put their hand on their mouth. The voice of nobles was hushed, and their tongue stuck to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard, then it blessed me, and when the eye saw, then it approved me. When I delivered the poor who cried out, the fatherless and the one who had no helper. The blessings of the perishing man came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me, and my justice was like a robe and a turban. I was eyes to the blind, and I was feet to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and I searched out the case that I did not know. I broke the fangs of the wicked and plucked the victim from their teeth. So he's saying he did what God told him to do? Because it's saying, like, it's kind of seeming like he didn't have to do some good stuff either. Since he was kind of breaking people's teeth. And then I said, I shall die in my nest and multiply my days as the sand. My root is spread out to the waters, and the dew lines all night of my branch. My glory is fresh within me, and my bow is renewed in my hand. Is he saying he took a vacation? Men listened to me and waited, and kept my silence for my counsel. I do appreciate when people keep their silence for my counsel. Doesn't happen very often. After my words they did not speak again, and my speech settled on them as dew. They waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the spring rain. If I mocked at them, they did not believe it, and the light of my countenance they did not cast down. I chose the way for them, and sat as chief, so I dwelt as king in the army, as one who comforts mourners. So is Job saying, right, God was leading his way, right? He's remembering back to the times when times were good, right? And he's thinking, right, that God had left him in these bad times, I guess what he was trying to say in the last couple chapters. And that's maybe how he feels, right? When I went up by the gate by the city, when I took my seat in the open square. So people were afraid of him. And the old stood up to pay him respects. The other people below him didn't talk around him. So he was in like a position of power, right? He's saying he kind of felt like a king. This isn't really a defense, Job. This says summary defense, but this is also what the salty author put. I don't know, man. A little bit lost here at the end. But we're in the middle. We're middle of a wave, right? Maybe we're still on the up crest, and I cannot see what's on the way down, right? Because this is in the middle of your discourse, Job. We're going to have to take a little break. I think he's saying, right? He did all those things for God, and then he said he had that position. People looked at him that way, right? He felt a certain way, I think. You know? He was used to a certain lifestyle. He was respected. And now he doesn't feel like that. But Job, that's the wrong way to go. You're internalizing it the wrong way, dude. Because when you internalize things and you don't have faith, it truly is just you looking at it, right? But when you internalize things with God and faith, right, you're never looking at things alone. It's a lot better. So, Job, I pray for you, my brother, as you're looking down from heaven, watching me lambaste you in real time. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that you're properly cooked after I'm done roasting you. Who knows? Yeah. You got some good friends, dude. Be happy about that. You have some really good friends. So be kinder to your friends. Be kinder to the people around you. Be a good steward for God, right? Listen. Read the Bible. Do that more. Read the flippin' Bible, dude. Stop telling me that you have faith and that God is real. Read the Bible. Talk to me about a book in the Bible. If you want to talk about religion, if you want to have a philosophical conversation, which I absolutely enjoy and love to have on a daily basis, that's fine, but that's a different thing. If you want to talk about religion, we can talk about the Word of God. Otherwise, it's a different conversation. So, thank God for giving us the opportunity to learn and grow as human beings every day. May we find strength, courage, and peace in the times coming, in the next days, weeks, months, years of our lives and the life of God. So, find some peace.